Hi, my name is Millennium, and in this little demo we are going to illustrate some of the new advanced OpenGL features in After Effects 7. The best way to do this is compare After Effects 7 to After Effects 6.5, which until recently was the current version of After Effects. Okay, let's start. Perhaps the most important feature for many of you is the support of blend modes. In After Effects 6.5 this is not implemented yet. On the screen you can see three circles, a green one, a red one and a blue one. I've set them to additive blend mode so they form a white spot in the middle. This is actually how light blends in nature. To illustrate that we are not cheating here, I'm going to select them and temporarily switch them back to normal mode. If I switch them back to additive mode, our blending reappears. So far we have only been working in adaptive resolution, as you can see. Don't worry, I'm using a German system, so the words may not look familiar, but I'm going to explain everything. If we switch now over to OpenGL, our blending is going to disappear again. You see, there is an overlay appearing indicating that we are actually in OpenGL mode, but our blending is gone. It looks like we have switched the layers back to normal mode. If I turn off OpenGL and switch back to adaptive resolution, our blending reappears. Similar to blend modes, adjustment layers don't work in After Effects 6.5 when using OpenGL. You can see I've created an adjustment layer on top of my diamond animation and I've applied a hue and a glow effect to it. I'm selectively turning them off to illustrate how they work. I'm turning them back on to show you how they get lost again when using OpenGL. I activate OpenGL and whoops, they are gone. I bring adaptive resolution back and there they are again. Another feature that you need almost on a daily basis is motion blur. As you can see, I've created a simple circle again and it's moving in a diagonal line across the screen. You see, in adaptive resolution mode it works just fine. I've activated the layer switch and also motion blur preview for the composition. If I now switch over to OpenGL, again everything is lost. Bring back adaptive resolution and everything works just fine. When working with 3D layers, it's most important to know what your light is going to look like later on. I've created a simple tilted plane and a spotlight, and I also added an ambient light so the plane will also show up in the areas where it doesn't receive any light from the spotlight. If I now adjust parameters of the spotlight, they will all show fine in adaptive resolution mode. After I switch to OpenGL, they won't display fine. You see, there is a jagged edge, and if I adjust my cone feather, it also doesn't display correctly in my composition window. Another feature that you cannot find in After Effects 6.5 is edge anti-aliasing. Everything is fine in adaptive resolution, but when you switch to OpenGL, your edges appear jagged. You can clearly see some stair-stepping along the edges. It just doesn't look smooth. The last feature I was going to discuss were accelerated effects, but then I remembered. Version 6.5 doesn't have such a thing, so we are going to save our breath for version 7 in this respect. We are now in After Effects 7, and as you can see, the project is the same. In order to make use of some of the advanced OpenGL features, we need to check a few options first. To do so, we are going to Preferences, Previews. As you can see, this panel looks familiar. By clicking on the OpenGL Info button, another panel will come up. This panel tells you which capabilities your graphics card has and which features it supports. As you can see, I have a Quadro FX 4000 card which supports all features. In order to use those features, the mode should be set to more accurate. This is the default setting. Should you experience problems, you might give the faster setting a try. This will downgrade requirements and look like OpenGL in After Effects 6.5. Obviously, this does not support all of the features then. Another thing of importance is to check the settings for effects. There is a new class of effects which are called Smart Effects that can also make use of OpenGL. If you want to make them use OpenGL, you have to check this option. Again, our first example are our circles. Just like in After Effects 6.5, I'm going to change their blend mode back and forth, and then I'm going to switch over to OpenGL. As you can see, now that we are in OpenGL mode, our blend modes remain intact. This is a great improvement over After Effects 6.5. Of course, this is not only limited to the additive blend mode. Other blend modes work just as well. So I'm trying a few little things and you can see how the effect changes. When we switch back to adaptive resolution, there is no visible difference between software only mode and OpenGL mode. Back onto our adjustment layer, we are going to experience pretty much the same. As I did before, I applied two effects, which I'm selectively turning on and off. Now I'm switching to OpenGL. As you can see, our effects look the same as if we are working in adaptive resolution. Nothing has changed. Our motion blur is just the same as when we left it. It's still in adaptive mode. And now we are switching to OpenGL mode. Miraculously, our motion blur looks the same just as with adaptive resolution. Another example is our spotlight cone. As you can see, I'm already playing around with it in software only mode, adaptive resolution, and now I'm switching to OpenGL. Notice that there is no discernible difference between OpenGL and adaptive resolution. It looks almost perfect in both modes. Another thing that gave us trouble in After Effects 6.5 is edge anti-aliasing. Let's zoom in again and keep an eye on our edge. This is again adaptive resolution or software only mode, and now we are switching to OpenGL. As you may have noticed, there was still a slight jump in our image. This is because OpenGL anti-aliasing is calculated differently from software anti-aliasing. I'm going to repeat this a few times so you can see. Let's move on to the big one. The big one in this case is hardware accelerated effects. Not all effects are accelerated, so don't expect any miracles with some of your favorite plugins, but there is a list in the help files that tells you which of After Effects effects are accelerated. One such effect is hue saturation. Let's turn it on and see what happens. I prepared this so the image looks red. As you can see, when we scrub through the timeline, we will get noticeable blocks. This is because After Effects downsamples everything so it can keep up with speed. If we now switch to OpenGL, we can scrub through the timeline and it won't do any downsampling. It will always use the full resolution. This is because it uses the power of your graphics card. Other effects that can use hardware acceleration via OpenGL are, for instance, the directional blur and the Gaussian blur. I'm just going to scrub the values here a little. This is still adaptive mode. And now I'm switching to OpenGL, and it is just as fast as adaptive mode. If you remember, whenever you scrub such values in After Effects 6.5, your layer will turn black or do something other strange, which indicates that all of the effects are just software based, and the OpenGL buffer that is used for display must be calculated separately. This is no longer the case in After Effects 7. Now that you know how OpenGL works, let's take a look at the render queue. There is now also an OpenGL setting, which of course with all the advanced features makes much more sense. You could render compositions in the past already with OpenGL, but in most cases you wouldn't want that because the quality was so low.